Well, Israel's defense ministry says that its army will stay in what they call security zones, controlling 20% of Gaza. This comes as the UN estimates that around 500,000 people have been displaced since Israel resumed its offensive in the enclave. Our Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran joins us live now from Raim. Matt, good to have you with us on the program. Now, this security buffer zones that's set up by Israel in Gaza, is there a sense from Palestinians that these areas have, been permanently seized?
Girish, good evening to you. That certainly was the sense when we heard a couple of weeks ago or there was a sense of foreboding when a couple of weeks ago Israel Katz made the comments that the Israeli Defence Force would start taking over large tracts of land in Gaza. And what we have now seen is that come to fruition. There are a number of pockets across Gaza where the IDF has been moving in, has been taking control. Not only the buffer zone, as it was being described during the course of the last ceasefire, which was the stretch of land running across the Israel-Gaza border, right around Israel and Gaza. That has started to grow in depth. It's with the Israeli forces moving further and further into the territory there. But we've also seen Israel start to carve new strategic lines into Gaza, including an area known as the Morag Corridor. This is a line that stretches from the Israel-Gaza border to the Mediterranean Sea and effectively lops off the bottom part of Gaza, the southern part of Gaza, stretching to the Egyptian border, centred around the city of Rafah there. The IDF now taking full control of that. The IDF is also operating in an area known as the Netzarim Corridor. This is another line that stretches from the Israel-Gaza border to the Mediterranean and cuts off the sort of northern third of Gaza City and beyond. Israeli forces have moved back into that territory over the last few weeks since the ceasefire was shattered and Israel resumed its bombardment. So the way in which the IDF has been behaving, these public comments from Israel Katz, the Israeli defense minister, and the way in which Palestinians in Gaza have been moved, have been told to evacuate certain areas over the last couple of weeks, is certainly adding to this sense that that land is now firmly in Israel's control. It is one thing, as Israel was doing before the war, to control all of the borders in and out of Gaza. It is an entirely different thing to start taking control and physically occupying the land within the Strip as well.
And as all this is happening, Matt, the IDF's armed offensive is continuing, especially in Gaza's north. What can you tell us about the situation there?
Yeah, we're not just seeing a situation where there are airstrikes happening in Gaza. We are also seeing ground forces moving in, taking control of certain areas. And there is almost a pincer movement happening in Gaza from the south and also from the north, taking control of extra areas in the Strip. Also, evacuation warnings being issued to Gazans there to move into smaller and smaller pockets. So those ground operations, both in the north and in the south, are continuing, with forces moving in, taking control of more land and, yes, pushing those Palestinians into a smaller and smaller pocket of the Gaza Strip.
And is there any movement on the ceasefire, because Hamas has said no to Israel's latest plans?
There certainly hasn't been any movement. Those talks have stalled, and you would have to think that the way in which this is playing out with regards to Israel taking control of more territory in Gaza, refusing to lift the humanitarian blockade in the Strip, those are issues which are non-negotiables for Hamas in any ceasefire and hostage deals. They are red lines and have consistently been part of Hamas's demands when it comes to agreeing to any new truce and releasing more Israeli hostages. There has been some murmuring, some chatter that maybe there was a breakthrough on the horizon, but that does not seem to have come to pass. That was relating to the release of around 10 Israeli hostages still held in Gaza. There are 59 there, but only 24 of them are believed to be alive. This ceasefire proposal that was being talked about earlier this week related to the release of 10 of those hostages in exchange, at least 10 I should say, in exchange for a 45-day ceasefire. But the way in which this is playing out, with those territory gains and the refusal to let aid into the Gaza Strip after 6 weeks or so of this humanitarian blockade, it certainly is not making it an attractive prospect for Hamas to agree to.
And finally, Matt, what's been the fallout from the French president's comments in supporting the rights of Palestinians to have their own state?
Girish, this is something that's been playing out on the sidelines, and while it is somewhat detached from the plight of the Palestinian people, it does show why it is important, because it shows how there are these subtle shifts in thinking, in policy and in politics right around the world as a result of this 18-month-long war in Gaza. Late last week, the French President Emmanuel Macron had said that France could move as early as June to recognise Palestinian statehood. If it did, it would be the first G7 nation to do so. There are more than 140 members of the UN which recognise Palestinian statehood, but some of the biggest players, the US, the UK, Canada, Germany, France, Italy, including Australia in that bunch as well, they are all saying, yes, two-state solution is a good idea, but haven't gone so far as to recognise statehood. So when Emmanuel Macron made these comments, they certainly caused a stir here in Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hitting back, saying it would be a reward for terrorism, pointing to the war in Gaza, saying Hamas would be rewarded if that was to go ahead. Also saying to establish a Palestinian state so close to Israeli cities and towns, that would also be a security threat to the state of Israel there. Benjamin Netanyahu's son went even further a couple of days prior on social media and tweeted or posted on the platform formerly known as Twitter, now known as X. Yair Netanyahu said in response to Emmanuel Macron, quote, "Screw you," and then started listing off a number of French territories that should be given independence, like New Caledonia and French Polynesia, if this was the precedent that Emmanuel Macron was setting. So it is a somewhat predictable response here in Israel to comments like that from someone like President Emmanuel Macron, and certainly as this war continues, those emotions are even more heightened. Girish?
Okay, Matt Doran in southern Israel, thank you so much.